Hi, guys, and thank you for joining us today. This is Crystalline Page from Crystalline Awakenings, and welcome to my YouTube series called Everyday Superheroes, the Om Within series, and where I talk with amazing individuals that have made an impact in many people's lives, and especially mine, and who help people empower themselves every day and unlock the divine universal power within us. I'm here with one of my good friends and my mentors, Jeff Walker. He is a life coach and shamanic practitioner. He has a master's in clinical psychology. And thank you so much, Jeff, for joining us. I'm really excited to have you here. And we got some cool stuff we're going to be talking about. So welcome, Jeff.
Thanks. It's great to be here with you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to have you here. If you guys have been following me for a little bit and know my story, I've been going on this spiritual journey for about a decade now, and it started with yoga and meditation. And actually, a few years ago, I believe it was 2015, when I was guided to go to this spiritual expo around here in the Detroit area in Michigan. And I think it's just amazing how life works. And I was guided to actually meet Jeff at this expo for the first time. How we met was really funny because actually at this expo they did this drawing for a free session. I wasn't really sure what it was for. And it's really interesting how I was chosen to win this prize. And like usually it really surprised me because I never really win any of these kind of things. And so it was this big room in this really nice like 5-star hotel in downtown Detroit. I can't remember what hotel was called, but I was just walking around this like conference hall, and there was all these people, and I'm like, okay, I don't know where I'm going. No one told me where I need to go for this. I just got a little paper. It said, you want a free session at the Living Balance Center. So I was walking around. I'm like, where do I find these people? I don't know. So I just kept looking around. And then I turned the corner and I saw this big sign. It said, like, I saw the Tree of Life. And it's amazing how that the Tree of Life has much significance in my life. And after that point as well. And I saw the Living Balance Center, and there was this really tall Caucasian bald man that came out of nowhere, and his energy was so vibrant, and it was just so vivid in my head. I'm just like, who is this guy? But he welcomed me so just so enthusiastically, and he's like, hey, how are you? And the first thing he said to me was it makes me laugh. He's like, when you think of an animal, what is the first thing that comes in your mind? And I was laughing. And I'm like, what? I've never heard anybody greet me with that kind of question or like greet me in that way before. And I was laughing. I'm like, a tiger. And then he's like, does this tiger have a name? Like he was so energetic, and I loved his energy. And I said, tiger friend. And then from there, I feel like we had a really good connection. The energy was just always like flowing, and I don't know, it was amazing. Ever since then we started talking, and I had a couple sessions with Jeff, and he really helped change my life, like helped me open up to this new world of, I guess, the metaphysical and the spiritual. And I've been hooked ever since, and and you taught me just a lot how to work with other people, like especially in this realm, and also how to connect with my inner power. And ever since you did that, like it just inspired me to do this too. And I really feel like you helped me like find my path more. I've been kind of getting it here and there, and I had amazing support in my life, but working with you only for a few sessions, it was like probably 2 or 3. And it's been so powerful. And I just want to tell everybody about it. I tell people about this like a lot. Like this is my the story of how I got on this path to coaching other people and being a spiritual guide for them. And I've been loving it ever since. And it's really just, I found my calling, like really what I feel I'm meant to do in this lifetime. I have Jeff here with us right now, and that's how we met. And I'm very, very thankful for us connecting more and having you in my life. And we were just talking about it before we got on this call, that just talking about my wedding, like Jeff and his wife came to my wedding a couple months ago, and it's been a very interesting journey so far.
It has, and I love hearing you describe our meeting, because I remember that moment too when you came around the corner, and it just did flow so beautifully, and you were so open to to my crazy questions, and it did feel very settled very quickly in a sort of very alive and kind of like fizzy, bubbly, energetic way, you know. So that's really one of the things that I like to do is take people off guard in sort of a gentle, fun way, and help them connect to their own spiritual world, or their own connection to the natural world. And so what you were describing about finding your way is really, I think, key to how I like to think of working with people, is to help them find their own way. I like to work with people who have an idea but feel kind of stuck in their next step, where if we can reframe their thinking and create new ways of asking ourselves questions, then we can get unstuck and create a foundational platform for continuing to be unstuck throughout life. So by asking yourself, you know, what do I not see here? What am I not seeing in this moment? A person can suddenly receive answers that show them what it is that they're blocked about, or that they're missing, that they're not looking at, which is a totally different kind of question than we usually ask, especially in, I think, American culture. I'm not as well versed with, you know, all other world cultures and how they approach their inner workings, but certainly in the United States, we seem to focus on, why can't I get to this next place? And as you know, Crystal, I'm really not a big a fan of why questions, because why questions lead to internal blame and shame. Why can't I get there? Because you are a failure, because you are a problem, because you don't do enough work, because you don't work hard enough. And these are all internal messages that people tend to have, right? And when you ask, what can I do differently? What do I need to do next? What am I not seeing here? Then we're more likely to arrive at an answer that has generativity, that has benefit, that has potential for growth. And even more than that, like if we go back to your meeting tiger friend, okay? So even if a person asks themselves, what do I need to do here? They're engaged with their frontal lobe thinking, you know, the part of the human mind that tries to find patterns and answers. And it makes sense that it does that. That's, you know, in many people's belief system, the thing that sets us apart from the animals is that we have this frontal lobe where we find pattern and we find meaning, okay? But the human mind can get stuck there very easily if it's left to do what it wants to do of its own devices. So it starts asking why, what, and going over the same information over and over and over again. Whereas if I say, in fact, let's do it again. What's the first animal that comes to mind right now?
Right now is a ladybug.
A ladybug.
Yeah.
Okay. So would it be okay if I ask that ladybug a couple of questions?
Sure.
Okay, great. So Ladybug, it's a pleasure to be here with you in service of Crystal and in service of all these people who are listening today. And I'm wondering if you have a name that you'd like to be known by, or is Ladybug what you'd prefer to be called?
Samantha Ladybug.
Samantha Ladybug. All right, Samantha Ladybug. It's a pleasure to meet you. And I'm wondering if you have any information that you can share through Crystal about why, or let's avoid why questions as we were talking about, but how it is that employing you can be useful to people's pathway, to, or guides and teachers internal to the person, guides and teachers like you. How are you useful as opposed to just continuing to go forward with the human thinking brain?
The image I'm trying to show Crystalline right now is as a ladybug is seen very colorful and like flutters around. Maybe she could be like that in her business. Like they're very small. So they can go into like small places and not be noticed so much, but at the same time, like they have an impact. Like if you notice a ladybug, they're very red. So when you do see one, like you notice it, but they're very small. So like most of the time they can get around very like stealthily. They can see a lot, like they can fly, like so they can see like an aerial view and see like the bigger picture and be a part of the bigger picture, but at the same time like not be so like in your face.
Excellent.
And just like an elephant maybe. So she, maybe that's a good tip she could use in her business, like fly under the radar, like, no pun intended, but but yeah, she could fly under the radar, like be noticeable when she needs to, and like show her beautiful, like her wings and her colors, but at the same time, you don't have to be in people's faces about it.
Okay, great. So thank you, Crystalline, for being willing to just jump into that with me. And so what I think that illustrates, and so thank you, Samantha Ladybug, for showing up for Crystalline today. And I'm sure that, Samantha, you'll be willing to be of service to Crystalline from this point forward. Is that true?
Yes.
All right, great. So I'd like to I'm going to go back to talking with and to Crystalline now, but if you have any input, I'd be open to hearing it as we go forward.
Sure.
So what that illustrates to me, and so is that and what I was trying to describe or about to describe before I asked you to see what animal came up for you in the moment, was that connecting through our own internal workings to the natural world gives us new perspective on the things that we're trying to work on. It takes us out of the habituated mental patterns that the frontal lobe of the human mind engages in. So I'm guessing, no, I'm just guessing, but I'm guessing that what Samantha Ladybug said to you was in some ways new, maybe not like earth shaking, but in some ways new to you today. Your own process. Okay, and so listeners at home, what I would suggest to Crystalline to do in the future, and she won't be surprised by this, is to continue that conversation with Samantha Ladybug. And so to ask how and what questions to follow up on that beginning question. So Samantha Ladybug says, go ahead and be bright, fly under the radar. You don't have to be up in people's face about being noticed, but when it's time, you can certainly be right there and very noticeable, and get you can fly above things and get a different perspective. And so I would then, if this were my own work, ask Samantha Ladybug internally, how do I do that? What is my next step in doing that? What would that look like for me? What am I not seeing? And just see what comes and see what arises within me, and to take it without judgment, whether it's subtle, whether it's big, whether it's earth-shaking or just a new wrinkle. Because any new information that I come up with myself is new information that I want for my own process and path. And this actually, I think, is a good segue into one of the other things that you asked me about in your email, Crystalline, which was you wanted to know what some of the problems are that people come to me for. And
yes.
And so people come to see me when they are having communication problems. And that usually is communication with the self. Now, this could be communication within the family. It could be communication at work. But even those, I would think, we could usually distill to issues about communication within the self. So I consider myself an intrapersonal communication coach. Okay, intra being between me and me, like communication. Interpersonal would be between me and you, Crystalline, but intrapersonal is between me and me. And so oftentimes my communication issues with my wife or at work or whatever in the world really could be distilled down to a place where I am having difficult communication with myself, where I am not in concert with my own desires and needs, and where I am at odds with my own self through my thinking. And usually it's in habituated thought patterns. So stepping outside of those habituated thought patterns by connecting to the natural world through my own imagination and or shamanic practice, if you will, like having a spiritual guide or spiritual guides, animal guide or animal guides like Tiger Friend, like Samantha Ladybug, allows me to get outside of my habituated thinking. Now, people might say, you know, what's habituated thinking? Well, it's thought habits, and thought habits arise easily because they arise unconsciously. And what I mean by a thought habit is any place in your mind where you are hearing repetitive thoughts. Now, this could be going over a situation at work. Somebody said something that you're not quite sure what it meant, but it stung a little bit, and you go over it and over it and over it and over it and wonder, why did they say that? Notice that why question. Okay, that's a trigger, a clue right there. Why did they say that? What did they mean? What's going on? What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? Well, if you spend more than a couple days thinking about it, it becomes a habit, and it gets stuck and entrenched in the mind. So what I suggest is that people notice this. They use conditional thinking, which we'll come back to in a second. You might remember my talking to you about this in the past, Crystalline, but to use conditional thinking to notice their thought habits in order to break them. Okay, so I know I'm putting a lot of information into a short period of time, but I feel like you want to give your listeners as much as we can, as quick as possible, because what I really want to do is give people tools that they can take home. And when I meet somebody in the first session, I like to give them tools that they can take home to use from that point forward throughout their lives, that they can easily share with other people to help the whole world, not just so that they can come see me again. If a person comes and sees me just one time, whether that's in person or online or whatever, I like them to go home feeling like they have new skills. And so here's a new skill for all of you, using conditional thinking. In other words, if-then statements. Now, if you took any kind of math classes in middle school, you'll remember if-then statements. If this happens, then that happens. Okay? So when this happens, I'll do that. Okay? If equals when, and then equals I'll do. Okay? When I notice myself having a repetitive thought, I will first notice it. Okay, just simple start there. So I'm setting the intention to notice my thought habits. And then when I notice them, when I notice my thought habit, when I notice a repetitive thought, I will ask myself, is there anything new here? Is there anything new here? So just as I suggested that you ask Samantha Ladybug, what can I do? You know, is there anything new here? It might just be a wrinkle of information about the situation that you're trying to deal with. But is there anything new here? Because if there's any new kernel of information when you're trying to sort out a situation, then I definitely want it. I want all the information. I want all the information. Okay? But if there isn't, then I'm just beating myself up over a situation that I haven't been able to sort out using my human frontal lobe. And so I'm engaging in a round and round thinking, trying to fit a piece of a puzzle in that I don't have. I have a puzzle with one piece missing, and I'm trying to find that piece of the puzzle. So if my brain is offering me a repetitive thought, I ask it, do you have that last piece of the puzzle? Do you have anything new? Is there anything new here? If not, I'm going to choose to think about something else. I'm going to choose to think about flowers. I'm going to choose to think about ladybugs. I'm going to choose to connect with my natural world. I'm going to choose to be present, because when you're thinking about something that happened in the past and what should I do about it, you're thinking about the past and the future. You're not in the present. So is there anything new here? Super simple, non-judgmental. Because what people often do when they start to recognize negative internal thinking or, you know, counterproductive internal thinking or unconscious thought habits is that they say to themselves, shut up. They say to that voice internally, shut up. And that isn't helpful, because it's you that you're talking to. You don't like being yelled at. I mean, some people pay to be yelled at, but that's a whole nother webinar. So you don't like being yelled at, so why would you yell at somebody? And even more so, why would you yell at yourself? So again, here's an internal habit that people can use as a way in, because sometimes we don't recognize the underlying unconscious thought habits, but we do start to recognize that place at the outer edge of it where we say, shut up. God, I'm so sick of thinking about this. I'm so sick of thinking about this. Why am I still thinking about this? I can't figure it out. Well, why? Can't. What am I doing? Those are all triggers that you would suggest that you're locked in a infinite loop that has. So if you think about a figure 8 or an infinity loop, it cycles through a point in the center, but it has two loops that are the past and the future, past and the future, and in that middle point is the present. And so if you stop in that middle point and say, boom, I am noticing this. Now I'm in the present. I have a choice point now to make. And it can be frustrating at first, because when people start to recognize these things in themselves, they start to recognize it a lot. But that's good. It's not about that you have too much of it. It's about recognizing that it's happening at all and choosing to step out of it, choosing to step into the present and say, I'm going to connect with the natural world by talking right now to one of my spirit guides, my animal guides, my internal teachers, perhaps a teacher or mentor that you got information from that was helpful to you in the past, your internalized memory and connection with them. So I have, karate teachers and Tang Soo Do teachers and psychology instructors and therapists and people who have been strongly influential in my world, who, when I am stuck on something, when I notice it and step into the present, I might say, Sensei, what do you have to offer me today? And sometimes all that internalized version of that particular teacher does is bow. Well, that brings me into the present. I stop, I take stock of the moment, I bow internally if I'm in a public situation, or maybe just slightly if I'm home by myself, and then I'm smack dab in the present again, and I get to choose to step away from that thought habit of beating myself up and getting stuck in the past and the future, looking for an answer to something that might not be answerable until I find that last piece of the puzzle. And that might come at a random moment. So I want to be open to the possibility, but not get stuck in the looking. Does that make sense?
That's awesome. No, that is great. That's a lot of good information right there.
I hope that wasn't overwhelming. I got on a roll, so I thought I'd let it go.
No, I'm happy you did. That was perfect. It's a lot of good information that people can take away from this. And I wrote down like a bunch of notes, and like I already found, like, just in those few minutes, you already said like 7 ways on how someone can really just get out of their repetitive behaviors that can hold them back, but they don't really realize it. So I think at the end, if we can review that really quick, I think that'd be great. That was awesome. Actually, I do want to ask you, like, you mentioned like a bunch of people who have influenced you in your life previously. Like, I'm curious to know, and I wonder if people would want to know this as well, is like, how did you get where you are today? Like wanting to guide people to empower themselves and to get out of those self-depreciating habits and thought patterns and
yeah. Well, okay. So, like many people, I have places in my past where I was not really on track and not really in touch with where I wanted to be and how to get there. But I've always been interested in spirituality and in paying attention to signposts that as they arise in front of me. Oh, let me take a little sidebar about signposts, which is to say that if you set the intention, again, using conditional thinking, okay, which is, I'm sorry, I'll answer your question, I promise. So conditional thinking,
go ahead.
I wanted to talk about for a second, because so our minds, as I believe anyway, that our minds are predisposed to responding positively to conditional thinking. Because if you think about human evolution, we are hardwired to do lots of specific things. Like if there's movement in the distance, you judge it quickly. You don't say, maybe I should think about what is that on the horizon. If you see a stampede of buffalo coming towards you, you don't stand still and wonder what will happen. You run and you don't think about it. If you're a hungry person and you see food in front of you, you reach for it because you're hungry, because your body, your mind, your whole being says, this is what happens next. If this, then that. So based on our evolutionary biology, it is a perfect platform to move forward by setting up if-then statements that mirror what we are predisposed to. Okay, so I've always been interested in being aware of signposts along the way, and so I am a musician. I played in bands during and after college, and decided, and before that, but decided to pursue music as a career. I was playing really loud psychedelic rock music that wasn't commercially viable, but it was very satisfying and got a critical success, but didn't sell any records to speak of. So I had to figure out something else to do in order to support my creative goals. Mm-hmm. And at one point I struck on the idea of art therapy, and I'd always been interested in psychology as well as spirituality. So I went to consider the art therapy program that was available then at Wayne State and here in Detroit, and started taking some prerequisite classes at Oakland Community College, including a karate class with Sensei Burton Gottlieb, who I can't recommend highly enough. And so that I was taking art classes, psychology classes, and karate. And right about that time, I met somebody who became important to me and moved to California to spend more time with her, and abandoned my idea of art therapy at Wayne State University for love, and I moved to San Francisco. And while that relationship didn't pan out, I found myself in San Francisco, where I met Suma, my wife.
Oh, wow.
We'd actually met at the University of Michigan several years before and hadn't been in contact for about 7 years. So it was, you could say destiny brought us together again. But that's beside. The point is that there in San Francisco, while I was working for the California Labor Federation, I was sweeping out my San Francisco apartment. I had the back door open and was watching the fog roll in over Potrero Hill. And I heard a voice behind me that said, not many people are meant to be therapists. You are meant to be one. Now, that was a signpost on the road. That was, the natural world, the spiritual world, something talking directly to me. And
wow.
Crystalline, I swear it was right behind my right ear. And so I paused and I turned to write it down. I thought, you better capture this, buddy. Mm-hmm. So I turned to write it down on a notepad that was there. And as I did so, the same voice said, lead by example, follow yourself. So
that's amazing. Was there anybody? There was no one there behind you.
And this is a small apartment. My neighbors above me didn't speak English. My neighbor below me was never home. There was nobody there. There's nobody there.
That's amazing.
So that afternoon, I got on the internet, and this would have been in 2002. Mm-hmm. And I got on the internet and typed in art therapy, and there was there's a school in San Francisco called the California Institute of Integral Studies, also known as CIIS. Mm-hmm. And they were the first thing that came up in my Google search. They have a master's program in expressive arts therapy, which is different from art therapy in that it encourages people to use whatever they find creative. So that can be movement, music, poetry, whatever it might be. Painting, as opposed to just clinical art therapy tends to focus on clay and drawing, painting, but expressive arts therapy encourages an individual to to take their experience in one modality and use it in another. So like if you were to draw a picture, if I said, maybe you draw a picture of your situation, even if it's just abstract, the feeling of your situation, then we might look at that and write a poem based on the words that come to you from looking at your drawing. And then we might that into making a sculpture with your body that represents the feeling, which takes you from the external to the internal, so that you start to feel into your body, using your body to notice what it is you're experiencing, and then find steps away from it to change your experience to what you want it to be. So, I digress. So I found this online this school on Google, and it turned out they were having an open house like 3 days later. I went to the open house at CIIS, found my way to Namaste Hall, which I thought was a good sign. And by the end of the open house, I had tears running down my face and knew I was there where I needed to be.
Beautiful.
So I applied to the program. I got in. I studied expressive arts therapy for 3 years and met some fabulous people, some wonderful teachers, and during the course of my work there, I had the great fortune of taking a class with Dr. Isa Gucciardi of the Foundation of the Sacred Stream in the Bay Area. And so at that time, CIIS offered as an elective course a class called Integrating the Shamanic Journey into a Professional Therapeutic Practice. The course description promised to help practitioners mitigate burnout within themselves and also to reduce dependence of clients on them. Okay. Now, counseling, therapy, coaching, these are all, in my view anyway, businesses with sort of a funny business model where I want you to not need to see me. I want you to potentially want to come for continued growth, but not to feel, but to feel like you got what you needed as quickly as possible, so that because when people reach out to a life coach or to a counselor or to a therapist, they're searching. They feel like they have a need. They are in need. And my goal, my job, as I see it, is to help them not feel a need as quickly as possible, to fill their own needs, to learn to fill their own need. And so this class, promising to reduce dependence of clients on practitioners and also to help practitioners not feel burnt out, seemed like a perfect thing for me. I hadn't been in school for a while. I was overwhelmed with reading and coursework. So I thought it would be good for me to learn some skills to reduce my own potential for burnout as a student and certainly as a practitioner. And I also figured that, it makes sense to not let, but to encourage clients not to be dependent on me as a practitioner. And I always felt like I'd potentially be in a teaching role. And so if I could teach people to do that as well, that it would possibly have a greater impact on the field overall and on humanity. So here we are in this class, and Isa, again, Dr. Isa Gucciardi of the Foundation of the Sacred Stream, I think it's sacredstream.org. Within the first 20 minutes of our weekend seminar, had presented things in ways that I had never seen, had suggested things that resonated deeply with me, and had shown tremendous strength and power in a way that it was surprising. She said at the beginning of our course that I believe we are here to save the world. And when she said that, she cried, and she said, I'm not sorry. This is just how strongly I feel. And then she kept teaching. And I thought, oh my God, that's the kind of power and honesty and strength that I want. And that's what I want to share with people.
Beautiful.
That's what I want to share with people. So Isa and the Foundation of the Sacred Stream provided me the opportunity to take that course several times, because back then I was able to take that course for free as many times as I wanted after having taken it once. So I took it several times and helped her teach a couple of times, and then took many other courses through her foundation and learned a lot about applied shamanism and about shamanic journeying and about soul retrieval and about soul part exchange. I mean, all kinds of things that have really become important to the way I view the world and what I like to share with people, because many of the things that I learned there are perfectly in line with modern psychological practices, because of course modern psychology in large part comes out of observation of indigenous people's practices and how they relate to the natural world and deal with modern problems. So shamanism and psychology are kissing cousins in my view, and it really brought me to a place of interest in not being a therapist per se, but being a coach and a helper. So I moved away from the idea of becoming a marital and family therapist, which was what I was in school for at the California Institute of Integral Studies. Nothing wrong with being a therapist and nothing wrong with that program. It was just not as much what I wanted to do anymore. The work that I wanted to do was more future focused, which was more in line with coaching and shamanic practices.
Perfect. Beautiful. So the two, I was wondering if you could just repeat those two schools you mentioned, if anyone would be interested in going through what you did.
Sure. So I have the internet up in front of me, and I'm going to pull them up just so I make sure I get the websites right. Okay, Crystal?
Sure.
So first was my master's degree in counseling psychology with specialization in expressive arts therapy. It is from CIIS.edu.
Mm-hmm.
CIIS.edu, California Institute of Integral Studies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then Dr. Isa Gucciardi and the fabulous people of the Foundation of the Sacred Stream can be found at sacredstream.org. Sacredstream.org. And Isa has been doing great work with Robert Thurman and a number of Tibetan lamas that have come to the United States for a wide range of teachings and programs, and just really doing great work. One of my favorite people.
Awesome. Oh, those programs sound amazing. Definitely probably to help people if they want to study and do the kind of line of work that you do. Yeah. I thank you for sharing that. That was wonderful. There was a couple of things I want to ask you if you could review or explain a little more, just in case there's different people in the audience that I work with. Like there's people who are just coming into this, like the practice of learning about spirituality and understanding the terminology, or there's people who have a little background in psychology. Maybe there's some people who don't even have a background in psychology. And there's some people who are pretty advanced, who do practice. Like there's some people who are channelers themselves and things like that. So could you explain what are signposts and what's the difference between shamanic journeying and something else? Like the first thing I thought of, there's some people in my audience who use psychedelics. I think a lot of people, maybe that might be going off topic, or I don't even know. I think it'll get more into some good stuff too. I know some people know what psychedelics are. Then I know there's a big difference between shamanic journeying and using something like psychedelics. Yeah. But we'll go first with signposts. What are signposts?
So signposts are, at least the way I'm talking about them in the moment, is not so much about along the side of the road where you're driving, but along the side of the road of your life, where you see something that stands out and takes your attention, something that calls to you, something that has resonance and feeling, and it could be good and it could be bad. So in martial arts training, the best teachers, in my view, suggest not that you are ready to fight, but you're ready to remove yourself and your loved ones from danger. So you develop your sense of awareness to things. So if danger is coming, you don't head toward it ready to meet it, you cross the street. Okay? So a signpost could be something like, the feeling of danger. It could also be that voice in your head that says not many people are meant to be a therapist, you're meant to be one. It could be a person that comes into your life that turns the corner and says, I'm ready to answer your questions about what animal comes up in the world, and maintaining connection with that person. It could be, the experience of feeling stillness where you don't expect it. And so when something, when you have like a sound that rings in your ear for no reason, or a tingling feeling that you weren't expecting, or an animal shows up in front of you in your yard, or something that brings you into the present, that you take stock of the moment and don't brush it off as just a coincidence. Don't brush it off as just something going on in the world, but to pay attention and to use conditional thinking to be open to its message if there is one for you. And so the way to do that is to say, when I encounter a signpost in whatever form, I intend to be open to receiving it. I'm setting the intention to noticing signposts, because they're all around us. But when we stick our head in our phone and get stuck on habitual thinking patterns, we limit ourselves to our ability to be present and be aware of the messages that are being offered to us all the time. So signposts, it's not like I'm saying that at every waking moment there is something that is groundbreaking that is being offered to you, though some would say that there is. I mean, like, to be fully alive and aware and awake, every moment is a gift. Every moment is a blessing. These things are true. Absolutely. The wonder of the waking moment is the best thing we have. Yet there are moments that are definitely more expressive, more exciting, more important than others. And so I set the intention in my life to be aware of them as they happen, so that I don't miss the opportunities they afford. And so a person can become more intentional even than that about being willing to see signposts. Like if you're working on developing your business, you can set the intention to be aware of opportunities that would support your business. So to be, the more intentional you become, the more specifically intentional you become, the more resonant you become with your intention, and the more resonant you become with the natural world and the spiritual world and your own psychology, in being with it in the flow of opportunity that is happening all around you. So that's what I mean by signposts. Okay. So now moving on for a moment then to shamanic journeying and how that differs from ingesting entheogenic plants or chemicals or psychedelics, as they are also known. So shamanic journeying is the same. Except that you don't have to take any drugs.
Exactly. Yes, that's
take plants. And I am not against people using entheogenic substances at all.
Right, I'm not either. I don't want to put that out there at all, that I am for or against them. Yeah, I prefer the shamanic journey, because I personally I've never wanted to use any drugs or chemicals or anything like that. And it sounds like I've talked to people who have used them, and what I've went through, like with you took me on a shamanic journey and taught me how to do it myself. I had the same experience, and so I prefer that.
Yeah. And so,
but everybody has their their
That's
practice.
right. So Aldous Huxley famously wrote a book called Doors of Perception, right? And so, what he talks about in there is like opening the doors of perception. And, plants like, uh, uh, ayahuasca, and certainly uh, psychedelic mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, and dimethyltryptamine or DMT, which is what
Yeah.
psilocybin breaks down to in your system, or LSD, lysergic acid diethylamide. These things open the doors of perception. Some would say they kick them open. So when a person learns to do shamanic journeying, they learn to open the door of basically at their own speed. And what's kind of cool about it, or one thing that's cool about it, is that when you're done with the journey after, say, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour, or however long you want to be there, you're done with the journey. If you take 50 micrograms of LSD, you might have 14 hours before you're done with what you're doing. And it's a big time commitment. Not only is it a big time commitment, but your ability to do other things can be impaired for a period of time. Now, again, I am not against things. I think that they have their place. They have their utility. But what I know for certain is that if you journey for half an hour, that the vast majority of the hundreds of people I've seen do this are able to get in the car and drive safely, and maybe even more safely than they were before they did it, in 5 minutes after being done.
Yes.
Now sometimes people have an emotional release during that period where they need to sit and collect their thoughts, or recover for 20 minutes. But that can happen in a therapy session, or even just in a talk with a friend. So that's a far cry from being unable to control your motor vehicle for 6 or 8 or 10 hours under the influence of a chemical, whether it's man-made or naturally occurring.
Exactly.
Now, so shamanic journeying is a process of creating within the self the opportunity to open the doors of perception by setting it could be considered in some ways like self-hypnosis, but it's Dr. Cucciardi teaches what she calls depth hypnosis, which is where a depth hypnosis practitioner facilitates a deep place of internal calm, where somebody can be even more in tune with reality, perhaps, than what they are able to be in a normal waking state. So, in a shamanic journey, a person is able to connect with some parts of themselves that are not necessarily fully engaged when we're in our normal waking thinking state. And it's real easy, and very few people in my experience are unable to do it. So, I have encountered a couple of people who over time were resistant, is what I would say. Or, there are certain personality types that, or what some people might even call psychological disorders, that would prevent people or reduce people's ability to being able to engage in this sort of work because they are scared or otherwise resistant.
Really?
I have encountered a few people who were quote unquote unable, but one might be able to say unwilling to let themselves relax and release enough to go there. Uncommon, but I have seen it.
Right. I highly recommend it. Like, it was so easy. I don't know if that's just me too. I'm very open-minded to things. But yeah, how you did it was just so relaxing. It was non-threatening. It was very comfortable. And yeah, I highly recommend checking it out if you're interested.
Thanks. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're
I
welcome.
personally, I don't know, over 100 people, certainly by this point, and my my teachers have taught thousands of people. And when I say I've encountered people who were resistant or unable, I'm talking about like 2.
That's a small amount.
Last, bunch of years. So yeah, it's a pretty small percentage.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a useful tool, and it does for somebody who is used to taking a lot of psychedelic drugs, it's not going to have the same jolt, but possibly. But it also is a good I think replacement. Like I'm thinking of a particular teacher of mine from Northern California who, when I was not involved with Foundation of Sacred Stream, but told me that when she learned to do shamanic journeying, she gave up using psychedelic drugs as ways to open the doors of perception because she felt like it was more true to her because she wasn't taking in anything else from outside. It was all coming from within her.
Exactly. And how I understand how you explained it was perfect, how to distinguish between the two. I feel like the shamanic journey, like you're in control, right? And like you're relying on yourself and not an external source or a substance to get intuition from or like insight.
That's right. And yes, you rely on yourself, and I think that it actually promotes self-reliance.
Right.
Creates self-reliance and self-confidence in ways that we're not used to because we can feel the answers that we're looking for coming from within us.
Right.
Now, like, let's say if we go back to Samantha Ladybug or Tiger Friend or any of your other internal animal and spiritual guides, people have said to me at times, well, what if I'm making this up? And what I always like, people are often worried about whether they are just imagining it, quote unquote, or just making it up, quote unquote. And so in both cases, I say this: if you are imagining the answers to your questions, more power to you. If you are making up the answers to your questions and they resonate and are useful, more power to you.
Yeah.
And so I find that these people who are concerned about whether they're making it up are afraid of their own power. Like they're not ready to recognize that they have the answers. They still want somebody else to do it for them. And as soon as they say, I'm willing to take responsibility, then the power that they have within them comes to the fore and shines through.
That's awesome. Oh, it's beautiful. We could talk about this, I think, for a long, long time. Like if you would be interested later, what's that?
As we have in the past, yeah.
I know. And if I would love to just probably, if you would be interested later down the road, if we could just do a show on that specifically, Absolutely. Like going through the journey, like what people could expect. I know a lot of people have been interested in this, like going through that journey, like with the people I talked to on Instagram, but I didn't have like the product ready, like to give them or to start. But finally, I have something, which I'll talk about that at the end, that you can start your journey, and then I lead you to people like Jeff that are more experienced in doing that type of guidance. But yeah, like that alone, like, is so fascinating. It's a whole different world. Really looking within, and that's what I try to bring people to, because it's just something so different from what we're used to. Like with mainstream media and how we are kind of programmed or taught in like the societies that we grow up in, like no matter where you are in the world, I realized that a lot of us were trained to have these limited thoughts and like not rely on ourselves for answers. And right. I really want to just help people realize, and I see that's with you too, that we want to help people realize that all that power is within you and all your answers can be found within you. And I love how shamanic journeying can bring those answers to light and bring them up to the surface so we can be conscious of them. And I love it. It's so awesome. Like, I love that kind of stuff. And then you introduced that to me. I love it so much. It's beautiful. it's beautiful, like the experience you can go through just by like connecting with yourself and like, I guess like harnessing that power within. And it's beautiful. Thank you, Jeff. That was awesome. We're coming close to the end of this call. So I just want to ask you if you could just review really quick, like 7 points of, or like some 7 takeaways, I guess, that we talked about and that people can take with them after listening to this call, like that can help them like today in their life to start like this journey.
So you said you noted at least 7. So let me go through what comes to mind and see if I miss any. Okay.
Perfect.
So first of all, to use conditional thinking.
Yes.
As a when I notice this, and it doesn't have to always be about thinking. It can be, when I get up tomorrow, I will remember to take my suitcase with me when I go to the airport. When even just setting intentions like that using conditional thinking can be potent. Okay, but so using conditional thinking to recognize unconscious habituated thought patterns.
Yes.
To challenge them and ask, is there anything new here? Is there anything new here? Because if there's more information, I want it, and if not, I'm going to make a choice to think about something else. To consider asking yourself, what's the first animal that comes to mind, and without judgment to accept it as a potential teacher. So let me just say one thing about that. This what I just said, without judgment, is super important, because let's say I ask myself, what's the first animal that comes to mind? And it doesn't just have to be one animal, folks. It could be as many animals as are willing to be present to help you. I'm sure Crystalline can tell you about several that she's.
There's plenty. New ones just keep coming up all the time, and it's awesome. And I pay attention more to nature. That's really like all these amazing animals keep coming in my life, and I looked into a book I talked to you about is by Stephen Farmer, I believe. It's called Animals Speak, or it might be another guy. But they just, it's just like an introduction of like what certain animals would mean in your life, like what kind of messages they're trying to bring to you. And I like it, but this is another topic that I would love to talk about too.
Let me just say something about that quickly.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. So with just a word about guides. If you look at a guide and it doesn't seem to resonate with what you feel, let it go and go with your own feeling.
Yes, so, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. So guides are written by people. People come up from their own history and their own upbringing. So my feelings and understanding and thoughts about Tiger are different from yours, Crystalline, and they're going to be different from most. Not from most people's, but from each person has their individual idiosyncratic understanding. So what I like to do is when you say ladybug comes up, I might ask you, what are the attributes of ladybug? What does ladybug mean to you? What is important about ladybug to you? And then go with that as your signpost, as your guidepost, as your guiding force with your relationship to ladybug or to deer or to rat or to cockroach. So without judgment, allow whatever comes up internally to be a teacher, because cockroach, even if you don't like them, and I am not a fan personally.
Me either.
But sometimes cockroach has an important message. Okay, and so if you're receiving a message from ladybug and you are happy with your relationship to ladybug, just let it be. Now, if you want to look at a guide and see what someone else thinks about what a ladybug means, that's fine. But don't let it. We're trying to develop our own self-reliance, our own our own personal cosmology, our own personal cadre of understand, or not cadre of understanding, but like our own way of interacting with the world, and to stop relying on other people's when we don't need it. So that's guides too. Guides can be great sources of information, but they are not the be all end all.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right.
That's what I wanted to tell people too, because you taught me that you have to go with your own guidance of what this animal could mean in your life, or what could this signpost mean, because it's for you. That message was meant for you.
That's right. So you don't want to let the church or the state or the school tell you what your truth is. Your truth is your truth, and you go forward with that, and step away from people who deny your truth. Step away from people. You don't have to not let them be in your life, but you don't have to let them run your truth.
Perfect.
Okay. So let's see, what else? What other takeaways? So if you, what did I miss? I got off track. What did I miss on that list?
Sorry. Let's see. Oh, I wrote down like stop beating yourself up. I think you mentioned that a lot. Like I think a lot of people do. Like they have that self-depreciating
inner critic. We could talk about the inner critic for hours.
Oh, I know. That's definitely something, another topic like people could really benefit from, I think.
Yeah. So we could, so when you notice the inner critic, to talk to it gently, because it's part of you. It's part of you. And if you tell it to shut up, you're telling part of you to shut up. If you try to get rid of it, you want it to go away, well, you're getting rid of part of yourself, and then you're no longer whole. So instead of getting rid of it and creating a hole, heal. Talk to it gently. Make it your friend. And the inner critic will say, that's not going to work. That guy's a dork. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, the inner critic is used to its role. It's been doing it for however long you have had one. And most people start having inner critic at about 4 years of age. So it grows out of our experience, and it grows unconsciously. So we're not aware of it until we become aware of it. And then it's just been doing its own thing in the background for all this time. It's not just going to change instantly. Well, I shouldn't say it's not going to. For most people, it doesn't change instantly. For most people, it takes some work and some kindness and some self-love. And so if you can find that through noticing your habituated thinking, noticing your own negative thought patterns, recognizing that they are not what is necessary, and asking if there's anything new there, and otherwise stepping aside from it and working in the present and working in truth, then that inner critic's voice diminishes and becomes an inner champion. Because the inner critic always responds negatively after the fact. The inner critic always says, you screwed up. Well, wouldn't it be nice if the inner critic also said, hey, you did a good job at that today? Or, hey, or here's how you could have done that a little better. So if you can create, and as you can create, because I know you can, as you can create a better relationship with your inner critic, it can become your inner champion and help you, as opposed to just beating you up after the fact.
Yes, that's perfect. Oh, that is like golden information. I think that could really help so many people. And then I think the last thing I wrote that I think you didn't cover quickly is be open. Yeah.
So just if you set the intention to be increasingly open, and not beat yourself up when you notice that you just spent 2 hours surfing the internet, absentmindedly looking at podcasts and eBay and whatever else. Notice it and say, oh, here's a place where I shut down. Maybe you needed it in that moment. Sometimes people need to disconnect. Or maybe it's a place to notice and say, I'm going to be more conscious of that. Like I try to notice and remember that the computer is a tool, not a toy. I mean, it can be a toy. But I find that if I allow the computer to be a toy, it's often to the exclusion of my creativity. That I often don't spend as much time making art or music or talking to my friends or reading books or walking in nature. And these are the things that I find to be more developmental of my spiritual being. So I'm not going to say that I don't find anything cool on the internet. That would be a lie. I'm not going to say that I don't get lost in the whole of I love records, and so I'm always looking for records on the internet. But I try to set a time limit, because if I'm not open to the rest of the world, then I'm closed. And so another word on that, like in your interpersonal relationships, folks, if you have a person that you feel like never sees you, never hears you, just notice your own body language when you talk about that. Because if you fold your arms and you say, that person never understands me, well, then you have created a never. And the only thing about always and never that are always true is that always and never are always never true. There's always an example that will contradict an always statement or a never statement. Unless you know, with the exception of, I'm never going to let you get close to me. So if I say they never, then really I'm creating the never. I'm saying never, and I have closed myself down. So if instead I say, we haven't connected well lately, and open my arms, then I create the opportunity for that to change. And so that's the same kind of mental habit, the same kind of habitual thinking that I was talking about earlier, getting into this place of, this is what I think, this is what I believe, and being open to change is being open to opportunity and just being open.
Perfect. That's beautiful. And I think to just be open to the messages that come as you look within for answers, right. And be open to connecting to things that might be completely different from what you've been trained to be as normal, or like be open to like exploring like the things that are unseen that actually could just be like they've always been there. They've always been probably helping you, but you're just never aware of them until now when you're being more open or something like that. That's so right. Yeah, like it's beautiful. Like I just keep learning more, that there's so much more to learn. There's so much more to like the metaphysical world, and or however you want to call it, esoteric or spiritual world. When you're open, I just learned like when you're more open to maybe how the universe like whatever the universe is giving you, or be more open to the messages that are being sent to you all the time, I just learned like life flows so much better, and I'm just more happy, and like everything that I need help with, like it's always there. Like there's always answers. There's always someone guiding me, or there's always someone who can help me if I'm just open to that. Yes. And not closed off.
That's right. Oh, so, you know, as a closing thing to mention then, you know, we've been talking about self-reliance and developing our own abilities within ourselves and not being dependent on others.
Yes.
But it's important to note that taking care of ourselves includes asking for help when we need it.
Yes. Yes.
You know, like I liken this to plumbing, okay? You know, like I can clear a drain, I can change a faucet, I can do some simple plumbing, but when the problem gets beyond the reach of my arm in the wall, beyond the reach of my snake in the pipe, I call a plumber. And that doesn't mean that I'm weak. It doesn't mean that I am incapable. It means that I am taking responsibility and calling in an expert. And
exactly.
sometimes I learn something new when the plumber comes, and then I have more skills. Sometimes I learn that I did the right thing in calling the plumber. So if you have to call an expert, you call an expert. You have to ask somebody for help, you ask somebody for help. That is being self-reliant. That is not weakness.
I love that. Thank you for putting that other golden nugget in there. That's perfect. That's something like I've really been learning and trying to teach other people, that, yeah, like there's so many people that could help you, but if you're not open to the help, or if you don't want the help, then you can't grow or you can't improve. So I don't know, that was so awesome. Thank you, Jeff, for your time.
It's always a pleasure being with you.
Oh, thank you. Same here. And
the first moment you came around the corner.
Oh, thank you. I know. I'm just so happy. Like it was destiny to meet you, I guess, for our paths to cross. It's been awesome. And like Jeff said, don't be afraid to ask for help. It doesn't mean you're weak. It just means you're wanting to grow and you're just needing assistance, and asking for someone's help might just open up those doors for you and help you see more of yourself that you didn't see before. You just needed a third party to see that for you, and maybe give you that reassurance that you needed to do what you really meant to do and to flourish. And Yeah, so if you need more explanations on certain topics that we talked about today, we talked about a lot in just an hour. Um, email Jeff at lcjeff@gmail.com. It's lcgeoff@gmail.com. I highly recommend him to go on your own shamanic journey, to get to know yourself better and meet your spirit guides and all this other divine guidance that might be around you, but you just don't know how to see it yet or how to connect with it yet. He can definitely help you with that. And also check out my social media. I have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Check out the links underneath this video, and also theomwithin.com/meditation, so you can start your own journey to awaken the Om within, that inner power within you that is wanting to come out, and the world needs more people to just be awakened and alive and passionate about life. So thank you again, Jeff, for being with me on this call. It's been amazing, and it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to doing this again sometime.
All right, let's do it. Let's keep saving the world, Crystalline.
Yes, I love it. Oh, I'm so excited. It's awesome. Thank you, Jeff, and keep doing what you're doing. I love it. Let's save the world. Let's have other people come join us on this cause to keep saving the world. And first, it starts with you. Like I want to end. I end all my speeches or calls with this quote that changed my life: "Be the change you wish to see in this world," by Mahatma Gandhi. Be the change, guys. I look forward to talking to you again, Jeff. Take care. Bye. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me for the second episode of Everyday Superheroes, the Om Within series, where we talked to Jeff Walker. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. If you want more of a certain topic, we'll get that to you as soon as possible. Join us for the next episode, episode 3. We're going to be talking with Matthew Morningstar. He's a clinical psychologist and life coach and shaman as well. He's another mentor of mine, and we talk about all these things, from what is spirituality to understanding different religions and what's the difference between religion and spirituality, mysticism, and being a shaman. Hope to see you there.